Okay, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Nahmaduhu wa nusalli ala rasulihil kareem amma ba'd. We were discussing Imam Abu Ubayd and his Kitab al-Amwal, the book of public finance. Uh, so this is the second part of this scholar. Um, so last class we discussed about his background, about him and everything, his life, his positions and all. So now we are moving into his book. So we're gonna talk about his methodology, his way of writing. Then we're gonna jump into the book, and also we're gonna see some historical background of the book itself, why he has to write such magnum opus. Uh, that kind of contribution happened, but what is the reason behind? So I think that one will give us many, um, many lessons to learn. How do we react on current situation? Because life is different in every situation. If we know how our scholar react, how what was their reaction when such kind of situation comes, I think that is a kind of lessons for us to learn from it, and then um, adapt it or adopt it, and then we'll move on. So I think the first one is a methodology. Uh, I think the most interesting part of his methodology, I think I told you last time, he was a he was an eclectic scholar, which means ikhtiyariya. He is quite neutral in every single um, opinion. So he is not actually influenced by any mazhab or scholar particularly. As I told you, he came from all the way from Khurasan. Um, he was not Arab, um, but he was an expert in Arabic language itself. Uh, so so when he wanted to write this book, yes, he actually, part of the purpose of the book is actually um, reacting to those war sequences, the political issues, the social and economic issues. At the same time, he also wanted to create an academic environment. I think that's the reason why when you go and look into his book, I think you will be seeing, you will be watching many discussions that he wants you to come into his academia, so that you can also go through his arguments. I think that's a kind of pitch, that the kind of pitches that we need, for that kind of platforms we need, so that we can actually discuss up to any extent. So so that's how you can see his methodology is intellectual, spiritual, traditional. Of course, he used all those Quranic verses, um, hadith, also athar. Athar means the companions, prophets' companions, whatever they are, sunnah, whatever they are, tradition, it's considered athar. Um, so yeah, a lot of things that he always bring for each and every topic. The most important, interesting thing that I noticed, um, he brought so many topics, so many sections in his book. Uh, Most of the scholars of that time were not able to bring that kind of topic. As I told you, most of the topic discuss the issues with non-Muslims. Uh, like for example, how do you collect jizya if someone is selling wine and uh, selling some prohibited things, right? So what is the land for use if the non-Muslim using the land for um, some prohibited things according to our Sharia? So these are the issues were there, and he was able to identify and discuss those kind of things in his book. As well as he gives room for maqasid al-sharia, introducing ruling and maslaha al-amma. I think maslaha is, I think I will be talking to you about his background of this book, historical background. I think you will see how maslaha took place in his discussion. The entire book is based on maslaha. He wanted to bring harmony, and it is quite interesting to learn that as a Khurasani scholar, as a as a linguistic, and also qadi, he was able to bring so many changes until he became the patron, the patron of such thing. He became the source for the governor, for the governor of that place. So that's quite interesting. So we will learn into it, inshallah. We will learn, sure, I mean, after some time, maybe after this methodology. So to him, you can use analogy, qiyas, when there is no proof available in Quran and Sunnah. As a muhaddis, he scrutinized the tradition and transmitted them with their chains of authorities and verified their soundness, and where necessary, criticized their chains and selected only the most relevant narratives. As I told you earlier, he brings, of course, he brings many Quranic, sorry, he brings many hadith narrations. Um, in fact, when muhaddisin, as I told you, muhaddisin came later after him, most of the muhaddisin. Also, let me tell you, most of the muhaddisin, most of them, I think, we know the six traditional authentic book. Five of them, you won't believe this. I just learned this very. I just recently I learned this. Five of them, they were from Khurasan, including Imam Bukhari, um, Imam Muslim. He is from Naisabur, Khurasan. You have Tirmidhi, Imam Abu Dawud, Imam Nasai, except Imam Ibn Majah. All these five scholars, they came from Khurasan, because Khurasan that time, it was a country, it was a region consisting today's Iran, today's Afghanistan, today's Turkmenistan. So see how big it is. So it's like a entire Central Asia, right? It's a huge region that was called Khorasan. Today, if you look into Khorasan, it's just a one province of Iran. But last time it was an entire region called Khorasan. So that's quite amazing to learn, because most of the scholars came from that region. So as I told you, most of the scholars who came later, they also started referring to his book for some sort of hadith. As I told you, Mufassir started referring to his book, and also linguistic like Ibn Manzur, he also started referring to his book. So that's the thing, when someone writing a book, it is actually a reference for economics or finance or taxation, but at the same time, the same book also can become the source for other other academic faculties, other disciplines. So that's quite amazing. That shows how the book is accepted by the most of the scholars. That is what we call it, qubuliyah. So when Allah accept your work, remember this: when uh, Allah takes your work, accept your contribution, Allah will make it useful for in many ways. And you need to know this as well, when because after we die, it's not actually because after we die, yes, our rewards, I mean, the door of the rewards will be shut down, but there are only very few ways that you can still make it open. One of them is this: you write something, you contribute something, You do some sadaqah jariyah, and you make sure that, because you may tell your son or your grandson to make sure that the sadaqah jariyah is going, but what happened after that grandson? Do you think that that grandson will tell his son or his grandson to continue? We are not so sure about it. Maybe it might go for 50 years, maybe 100 years, but after that, but look at this kind of work. We still read, we still discuss. So every single knowledge that you are gaining from this kind of discussion books, I think the rewards are still there. He is still getting the rewards. So just imagine, a person died, but his doors of reward still open. So that's the kind of contribution that we should think about it. If you are a real economist or finance expert, I think you won't disagree with me, because you always want the profit ongoing, right? Because ongoing profit is always good. Whether you are at home, whether you are outside, you always want that thing happen, because you always want your revenues come to you all the time, without any obstacles. So that's something interesting to learn. Now if you really want the real reward, you already know this gold and the silver, this coins or whatsoever, it is not the real reward. After we die, we need the real reward, which is we call pehala. This kind of thawab that we need it. I think this is a kind of sadaqah jariyah. I think we need to think. One of them is actually academy. If you are able to write something like book, right? You see, I'm not saying only people those days, for example, wrote Sheikh Imam Abu Ubayd. Only those people in those days can do that kind of thing. Not necessary. Even today, people still doing it. For example, no need to go that far. You see, this book, Kitab al-Amwal, this book was there. Alhamdulillah, scholars were referring to this book. But this book, who brought it out? The translator who brought it out to everybody, so they share the rewards. And also the one also, one of our great scholar, I really admire him, Dr. Ugi Suharto, the one who brought this book out, and then he critically analyzed. It was his PhD thesis, by the way. I noticed somebody wrote about Ugi Suharto in his scholarly database, but he or she forgot to write his PhD thesis title. So this book was actually his PhD thesis. So please go back and correct it if you know who I'm talking to. So so that is the thing. So today, even today, if you are able to bring those kind of contributions to today's people, to how you want them to see, it's a different thing today, because there are so many ways that you can make them understand this kind of concept. For that, yeah, we need to go back and learn all this one by one. So that's quite important. So I think that's the most of it for methodology. As I told you, he was an eclectic scholar and independent mujtahid. On each issue he refers to proof. So he always evaluate everybody's view, and then later, if he agree, he will agree. If not, he will be giving his own view. Um, there are so many Quranic verses and hadiths. Sometimes even if you compare to Kitab al-Kharaj, you will be getting more Quranic verses and hadiths in this book as well. The most important thing is actually based on Islamic socio-politico-economic theory, because that's the topic what I want to talk to you next. How this book based on social, political, economical environment of that time, because the society had a huge problem of that time, so he managed to solve the issue through writing his book. Yeah, he didn't touch like Abu Yusuf. He mostly he talk about systematic shortcoming, but he didn't do that because the approach was different. Abu Yusuf, as I told you earlier, he wrote that book based on the request of Khalifa Harun Rashid. So he is actually directly talking to Harun Rashid. So he is keep on telling him the shortcomings of the system, and then he give the remedies. But Abu Ubaid is much more into, of course, it is based on social, political, economical order. It is based on requirement of that time of politics and government. At the same time, he opened academic, also academic. He opened many discussions for academic purposes. Yeah, that's the reason why he always talk to you about what of redistributive equity rather than how you implement. He leave it to the governors, he leave it to the rulers and the key people. But he what is it actually, yeah, he extensively he discuss what it is and how it is. It's up to you. All right. He was championing the establishment of a just and legitimate society by revitalizing an economic system based on the Quran and Sunnah, and reforming the financial policies and institutions. And also, he is proficient in deducing ruling from sacred sources and was able to produce financial maxims, especially with regard to taxation. Although he was an independent jurist who was well versed in various fields, so this is what I was telling you. In fact, some Shafi'i and some Hanbalis also started praising him because of his. Even they said he belonged to Shafi'i, he belonged to Hanbali, but not necessarily. He is actually a neutral scholar. Everybody admired him because of his work. He also brought many ijtihad of Abu Hanifa, Abu Yusuf, and Muhammad Shaybani, but sometimes he agrees, sometimes he disagree. So, as I told you, he was an eclectic scholar. All right. So now I need to talk to you about Kitab al-Amwal. So we are going into the book right now. So we are going to discuss what is this all about? What is it? Um, what books? We especially we need to learn what is actually the background of this book. So now, if I have to tell you, I need to remind you what I told you last time about Sagar, Sogor. Right? Sagar and Sogor is actually a um, frontier region between the Muslim territories and the non-Muslim empires. Because you need to know, you need to bring the place of that time. I mean the map of that time, which is actually Khorasan. So I told you Khorasan that time was consisting of all these three nations that we know today: Iran, Afghanistan, Turkmenistan. Um, you need to learn this as well. This is the Abbasid period. So last time I told you there was Umayyad. Then later, after within 100 years, Umayyad Caliphate fell down, fallen. Then the Abbasid came into position. But we need to know why actually Abbasid came into position. Why Umayyad was not able to continue. There are many reasons historians are talking about. One of the reason which is more related to our discussion today is, um, of course, the territory was expanding. The people started embracing Islam, but there were two ways of embracing Islam. One is by conquering their land. So when they go to any land, they give three options. Number one, accept Islam. Uh, Number two, fight with us. Number three, pay jizya. So either one. If you refuse to pay jizya, then yeah, they have to fight with them, whether they win or not. So this was the options those days. So I think this is one way of expanding the territory. The other way of expanding territory was peace treaty. We call it suluh. So this sulh was like, um, It's like, if they come themselves and they said, okay, we just want to make a peace treaty, we want to write it down for this limited years, and we won't fight with you, and we will be paying you some taxes. So in these two ways, actually, you can see the expansion was going. Um, you need to also learn that uh, the expansion started uh, from Medina, then went to Mecca, right? Slowly it was expanding. Then you have Baghdad. Later, after Baghdad, you have Basra. Then after that, you have until this place, like then you have Damascus, Syria, the other side. Then this side you have until Khorasan. Then Khorasan was expanding until Afghanistan. Then it closed to China and India. So now you can see that during the Abbasid period of the time that we are discussing right now, when Kitab al-Amwal was written, by that time it was a huge territory. But before that, Umayyad was there, and the reason why Umayyad were falling down, there was one of the reason is actually the people of this kind of territory, for example, Khorasan of that time, they were not quite happy with Umayyad Khilafat. Um, One of the reason is actually taxes. Yeah, because the tax was huge, and they were collecting taxes. In fact, they were collecting to. I will tell you later the collection of taxes. What was the issue, and why Imam Abu Ubaid wanted to write this book. Yeah, so I'll just come back to that point later. Yeah, so okay, so now to talk to you about this book. So as I told you, Sugur, sorry, Sagar or Sugur it's called frontier regions between the Muslim territories and the non-Muslim empire. There was a Syrian Sugur, and also there was a Jaziran Sugur. So meaning to say one side is actually Syria, the other side is actually Jazira. So this is what we call when you are living in a place where actually you are expanding, and the territory is expanding, you always have a fear of war, right? So if you live in borders, that's what happened. Now we have issues in between. We always have issues between India and Pakistan. So now my country is also having issues with China. So yesterday and day before yesterday there was some problem, they were fighting. So you got my point. When you are living in a border, then you always have issues. So now this is what I call frontier, the border lines, because you are living in between Dar al-Islam and Dar al-Harb, right? Because certain places is considered Dar al-Harb. People there, they don't have to pay any taxes. In Dar al-Islam, they have to pay taxes, and there is always the gate is open for war, for fight. Um, so now, uh, uh, like I told you last time, if you remember, during the Kitab al-Kharaj, I was talking to you about Sawad land. I think most of you remember Sawad land, right? So now I'm just bringing it to you the same kind of examples here. This is also kind of the same issue like Sugur land. So now, as I told you earlier, before this, there was a two way of conquering places. For example, territory, expanding territory. One is actually you go and then you conquer. So that kind of places called, that's kind of lands. And then once you conquer, the lands must be given. The lands must be given to the state, and sometimes the Khalifa will distribute that land. But that kind of land called Anwatan, Ain Nun Wauta, Anwatan. So this Anwatan is actually conquered by force, right? Then it will be divided among the soldiers. There's one option, divide among the soldiers. The second option is will be left to the inhabitants, so that the inhabitants will use the land like it used to be, but this time they have to pay taxes. Yeah, this is all when they are they have to pay these. If by the time when they conquer, uh, definitely they are non-Muslims, right? That's why they conquer. If they are Muslim, they are not going to conquer. But after some time, if they agree to accept Islam, then first of all, they don't have to pay jizya. Before that, they have to pay jizya and also kharaj for that land. Right now, for example, as I told you, one is anwatan. If you conquer, you can take the land, and then or you give the land to the same people who used to be there, that are non-Muslims, but you let them pay taxes, which we call kharaj, on top of jizya. So now Kharaj is a tax, the land tax, which approximately you have to, the measurement is the land size and all. But when it comes to jizya, tax poll tax, which is actually on head. And this tax poll, not necessarily the women and the children has to pay. Why? Because they are not your enemy when they are in the war, because they are not going to take part of war those days, the women and children. So the same thing comes when it comes to paying jizya. You don't have to ask them to pay jizya. All right. So now they have to pay kharaj, and then they have to pay jizya, right? Okay. What if they become Muslim, right? So after some time, if they become Muslim, yes, they don't have to pay jizya. They have to pay only kharaj. All right. But the reason why, one of the reason why Umayyad actually they fall down, they fallen. One of the reason why, because some of the governors of Khorasan still collecting jizya, though you became Muslim. So this is the reason why I wanted to tell you. Now I'm telling you the reason, one of the reason why Umayyad fell down, because of this. Especially the town of Tarsus. This is the town where Imam Abu Ubayd was Qazi for 17 years, 18 years, I think. Yeah. So, so, so one of the reason Umayyad was fallen, because they still continue to collect jizya, though you became Muslim. Many people of Khorasan, especially Tarsus. This idea, actually, Imam Abu Ubaid was against of it, and not only him, many scholars were against of it. And remember, um, because of that reason, the revolution started. Because I think this is the first kind of revolution, because you are imposing some tax which you are not supposed to. If you ask me if there any revolution started those days, I think one of the revolutions is one of the most important revolution against Umayyad. The people of Khorasan, they started it. They said it's too much to pay the taxes, because we are not supposed, because we are Muslims. We became Muslims already, and why we have to pay taxes. So somehow the what we call it, abna ad-dawla, we call it abna ad-dawla, means nation's child, nation children. So this is kind of nationality, I think, started coming. So now so as I told you, there is a thing now. For example, there is no taxes, there is no jizya, but they have to pay kharaj, right? Okay. Now see what I'm going to say, because this is something different. Um, Most of the scholar, they agree that you have to pay kharaj if you, even though you become Muslim. All right. But Imam Abu Ubaid had a different view. I think that view accepted by most of the Khorasan. Because of that, I think so many things changed. For example, yeah, this is the one of the thing that Imam Abu Ubaid, like most of the scholars, they don't talk about it, but this is very important. So I just want to share with you. Um, Remember now, I told you earlier, uh, there are two ways of conquering, right? Yes, one is, sorry, there are two ways of expanding the territory, right? One is conquering, you go and you fight and you get it. The second one is what? Sulh, peace treaty. So the people come themselves and then they said, okay, we want to make a sulh with you. We are non-Muslims, but we don't want to fight. Okay. See, most of the Khurasani of that time, they didn't fight with Umayyad. They made peace. So they were under the sulh. So now Imam Abu Ubaid is coming up with this statement saying that number one, they made treaty with you, they made peace treaty with you. They didn't fight. So there is no reason for you to conquer their land. You should give the inhabitants to use the land because you need to understand this point of view, especially the difference between Umayyad and Khalifa, Umayyad and Abbasid. Umayyad, they wanted to take the land and take the land and give it to soldiers, and then the soldiers started selling the land to people. See the thing, huh? Take the land. I mean, expand your territory, take the land and give it to the soldiers, and then soldiers has to pay. Sorry, the soldiers will sell the land to somebody, or maybe they will sell back to the inhabitants. These were some sort of ways those days, especially the Umayyad period. What happens actually? Those days, a land was a best commodity to sell because you see that we are talking about expansion. Because I'm just giving you this idea because uh, this is how most of the time it was always misunderstood. People saying that um, Muslim conquer the places and all. No, that's not true. There are few people they were doing it, but they didn't succeed. For example, what I'm saying today, just now I'm talking to you about what Umayyad did, right? Umayyad was doing it, but they didn't succeed. After a few days, after a few time, few years, I think the idea, the idea that even in the entire kingdom fallen because of that. Because one of the reason why Imam Abu Ubaid was very close to one of the governor of Khorasan, especially the city of Tarsus. That governor was working under Harun Rashid. Now you know Harun Rashid because I talked to you last time about with Abu Yusuf. Yeah, so he was saying um, one was the proponent of fiscal expansion through conquest. The other one was commercial expansion. You see, two different things. I think some of you already started uh, uh, relating yourself. One is conquering the places, and then you show your power. The other one is actually doing business and showing your power. I think now you understood what I'm really talking about, right? So one is some countries today are conquering places, countries, and they go to war. They go to Middle East and they do some war. I mean, they always fight with people, and they took the places and they are still taking the places. And there is another big country in the world. They don't go to war. What they do is actually they go to every country, every places, and then they expand their business. Commercial. It's a kind of commercializing. So now you can clearly see what's happening. Certain countries today doing. They go to some places and then they they give you money to do business, and then once you are not able to pay back, they take your land. It's commercially they are occupying your places. I think you understand what I'm saying, right? So the same thing was happening back then. um, uh, Imam Abu Ubaid was in the idea of saying that if you keep on letting that happen, if commercially you open the land for people, they will buy from you, but no one is going to pay Kharaj. So what will happen? The government is not going to get any revenues. That will stop the revenues. Especially, you need money for armies. You need money to build, forts and all. So you need revenues. For that reason, he said. Uh, his view with regard to land purchase in Sugurs, for example, the frontier lines I told you. In fact, he has a chapter. Let me tell you the chapter name: Purchasing the land conquered by force, which the Imam had fixed for its inhabitants and had become the Kharaj land. So these are the things. If you look into books, you will see those so many kinds. This kind of, there is a reason why he brings this kind of um, the topics. So I think that's what I think I really want to tell here, is that he wanted, of course, he wanted government come and take the place, but give it back to the inhabitants. Number one. All right. So if you let the inhabitants, um, if they if they didn't accept Islam, you collect from them the jizya and also kharaj. All right. If you come to a place, you didn't conquer them, they come to the treaty, I mean a peace treaty, according to Suluh, then you ask them to pay jizya and kharaj. All right. If they become Muslim, then you don't take jizya from them, you only take kharaj. But there is one more thing which I want to tell you here. Imam Abu Ubaidah, Abu Ubaid, additionally, he went another step. He said, no kharaj for those who became Muslim, who became Muslim due to sulh. See, as I told you, there are two ways of uh, expanding the territories. One is conquering, the other one is sulh, right? If you conquer and you take the place, if they become Muslim, they don't have to pay jizya, but they have to pay kharaj. Even though you become Muslim, you have to pay kharaj. The other way is you um, they come to you according to the sulh, peace treaty, and then they become Muslim, so they don't have to pay jizya. But do they need to pay kharaj? This is the point actually Imam Abu Ubaid wants to establish in his book, saying that most of the Khorasanis, they did not go to war with you. They were not ready to war with you. They accept they went with a peace treaty. I mean, they went through peace treaty. So after some time they become Muslim, so you don't have to collect jizya from them. At the same time, they also doesn't need to pay Kharaj. Instead, they have to pay Ushur. So now, because when I was talking to you about Kharaj and Ushur last time, it was actually quite confusing with Imam Abu Yusuf, because most of the time he used the word for Ushur and Kharaj. But Imam Abu Ubaid is actually clearly saying Kharaj is different, Ushur is different. Ushur is what? Ushur is actually 1/10, which is exactly what we are talking about zakat. If you have agricultural land, what you supposed to do? If you have agricultural land, you supposed to pay 10%. 10%. If it is your own irrigation. Sorry, if you don't have irrigation, if it is naturally coming, then you have to pay 10%. If you are doing the irrigation, the water supply, the maintenance and all, then you have to pay 5%. Yeah, nisful ushur, meaning to say 5%. So now, um, This is something amazing. Imam Abu Ubayd uh, proposing to Abbasids, most of the Khorasanis um, were accepted. They didn't fight with you. They went, they accept, they are in your expansion because of the peace treaty. That's number one. Number two, they were paying jizya, of course, before they become Muslim. But after they become Muslim, they stop paying jizya, and but they are paying kharaj. But his proposal to Abbasid Khalifa is stop collecting kharaj, instead start collecting ushur. It's the same way that Abbasids started collecting ushur within the people of Medina and Makkah and so many other countries, right? So he doesn't want to have the differences of Muslims in Medina, Muslims in Khorasan. This is amazing because for 300 years there were differences between Ajami and Arabi, as I told you, right? And look, a man from Ajami country like Khorasan is proposing something, saying that we are Muslims, but we are not different. First of all, we didn't fight with you, right? So it might be the same case for us today. You know, we are Ajamis, whether it's Malaysia, Indonesia, or India, right? Pakistan, Bangladesh, all this. But there is no difference between Muslims in Makkah and Muslims in Kuala Lumpur. There shouldn't be a difference. So he trying to prove that point. Why we have to pay kharaj? Because kharaj is a tax, we understand. At the same time, is also a kind of punishment, because you are asking us to pay kharaj because we fight with you and then we lost. No, we didn't fight with you. There might be this possibility we might win, but we didn't fight with you. We came through peace treaty, suluh, right? Agreement. We made agreement with you, and then we became Muslim. So stop collecting kharaj from us. This is amazing. Instead, that's the reason why, if you look at his book, most of the parts he talks about zakat. Even though the topic is Kitab al-Amwal, book of public finance, he talks a little bit about fire. You know, fire is actually consist of kharaj, jizya, and haraj and jizya, all these things. Then he talks about humus, which is actually a prophetic portion of the ghanima. He talks about spoils of war. You may call it Anfal. There is a Suratul Anfal, and then you have also Al Anfal is equal. I mean, it is, the meaning is equivalent to a ghanima, right? Anfal and ghanima is the same thing. So he talks about ghanima. From the ghanima, 1/5, 20% belong to Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and among the 20%, among that 20%, another, humus al humus, they call it, meaning to say that among that 20%, you take the 20% that belong to Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and his own family, his wives. The rest he will be distributing to his entire family, like Banu Hashim, Banu Muttalib, everybody. But after demise of the Prophet ﷺ, that was not necessary. So that 20% was distributed to the all those poor people, right? So he talks. Secondly, he talks about humus. First, he talks about five. Secondly, five means, remember, the word five is a common word for kharaj, jizya, all those things called five. Then you have humus. Humus is actually related to spoils of war. Then you have sadaqah, which I mean zakat. So today we may have difference between sadaqah and zakat, but zakat is what those days called sadaqah. Most of the book, I think more than 60% of the book talks about zakah. I think I'm telling you, there's a great reason why he talks about zakat, because Zakat, if you ask me, first of all, he wants to try to prove, he's trying to prove that people of Khorasan is only eligible to pay zakat, not more than zakat. And that zakat also, look at him, how dare he is. He wants them to pay in Khorasan and distribute in Khorasan. So he's saying that don't take that money, don't take that money to Baghdad. Don't take that money to Syria, Damascus, or Medina. Uh, Collect the money from Khorasan and distribute the money in Khorasan. So what I'm saying, he is proposing this, but all this were happening because of one governor under him. Imam Abu Ubayd was a Qazi. In fact, Imam Abu Ubaid was patron of this governance. So let me give you the governor name. His name is Abdullah bin Tahir. Abdullah bin Tahir. He died Hijri 230, 844 miladi. So this is what actually amazing. He talks about this zakat. He asked them to distribute in Khorasan, and he also started talking about private zakat, zakat al khasa, and then public zakat, zakat al awam. I think this is something, I think, reminding you when it comes to economic term today. We have a absolute poverty, we have a relative poverty. If I help one poor person personally, then I think I can help him to eliminate his absolute poverty, isn't it? But what about relative poverty? Because relative poverty is everywhere, right? So because you need to go far and look into the entire community to see that. So from that perspective, you will see the poverty is everywhere. So he proposed a public zakat. He asked government to collect public zakat. For example, you have a big land, you have a big like factory company. So he asked the government to come and collect, but he proposed that government to distribute within the Khorasan. Actually, let me tell you what happened actually because of the local distribution of zakat. Uh, I tell you, the Khorasan become, because the last before that, because of Umayyad period, before the Abbasid period, the Khorasan was a very poor, very poor region. But later it completely changed. I think someone wrote something about that country. Let me just read if I have it here. The most obvious achievement was in keeping revenue from Khorasan in Khorasan to use for Khorasani needs. So I think what happened because of this, the country started flourishing. The people started having luxury life, and then the poverty slowly gone away. So within few period like 15-20 years, you can see the entire Khorasan changed because of this application, removing the Kharaj and bringing Ushr. Ushr means zakat, yeah, because Ushr is the type of zakat you have to pay for the land, right? Because Ushur means 1/10. So I think this is what the reason why Kitab al-Amwal was written. I think this is the entire idea of Kitab al-Amwal. So now you can go through the slides. Um, all right. So this one, Kitab al-Amwal, elaborated on public finance and government administration in general. It divided to many parts. I mean, Kitab and also chapters. Yeah. And then the first chapter talks about, of course, it's talk about kinds of revenues interests to the Imam on behalf, because this is the connection between the ruler and the subject. So the whole book talks about five and also humus, and then later it talks about zakat. Yeah. So there are part of the book I think I mentioned here. I think you can also read, go through yourself. The part 4 talks about law on land administration. Part 5 talks about distribution of fight, and then you have iqta, ihya. Iqta, ihya is actually like you have the land of you can revise the land, and also there are few lands or belong to government only. Hima, right? There are few lands can be given to some sort of people to do something. Iqta. Yeah, these are the things mentioned here. Although Kitab al-Amwal is known by scholars for a discussion on public finance, is also highly some issues on tax and land. I think thus we all be able to know the economic and legal thought of the scholars in the first 2 centuries of Islam. See, since Khorasan is an agricultural society, right? The main economic activity. So that's the reason why I'm telling you this is the idea uh, with regard to the land. I hope you remember our first few classes. We talked about physiocrats, right? So what is the idea of physiocrats? It's about land, it's about agriculture, because they were saying, we have merchandies, we have physiocrats. So the idea of physiocrats is actually bringing the land, because agriculture is the real economy. But you can see it started way earlier. It's not like recently, it's 1400 years ago or 1200 years ago. Khorasan was an example of agricultural society, right? So there was need of a reform. That's the reason why this book is written, right? And then these are the economic ideas that can be extracted from the book. So you can yeah, that is the thing, you don't easily get this kind of ideas unless you go through with the background of the book. That's the reason why I spent more time to you into telling you the history and the background of the book. And in fact, this class is actually history of Islamic economic thought, right? So that's the reason why the history is quite important. You will not get these economic ideas if you don't know the background of the book. Um, yeah, it is the distributive justice, as I told you, how it was done using the zakat. I think that's amazing example. With justice, economic welfare, and social harmony will be achieved in a society. He sees the importance of the individual, yes, correct. However, in accordance with Qawaid al-Fiqhiyya, public interest supersedes private interest. He also stressed the legitimacy of the ruler in using his discretion in making decisions about public interest. So, yes, these are the things are there. He recognized the ruler's authority to decide based on public interest, either to divide the conquered lands among the soldiers or leave them in the possession of the local people. See, the possession of the local people, we talked about it. Similarly, in the allocation of humus, the just ruler could extend the defined limits of its if it is for public interest. However, he cautioned the ruler not to misuse the treasury for self-interest, but must be used for public interest. Yeah. He also touched the four canons, like what Imam Abu Yusuf did last time. Um, in discussing the rates of land tax, poll tax, he emphasized the ability to pay of non-Muslims, because even though it's a tax that you are putting on non-Muslims, but he consistently stress the method of payment and also the amount of the payment, because these are the things during the Umayyad. You see, this is amazing because he lived during the Umayyad and also Abbasid period. Same like Imam Abu Yusuf. It's a coincidence. I think both of them lived within the same time frame but in different places. That's the reason why his writing is different. But they both of them talking about the same thing, but that's based on different scenario, right? I think it's the same thing we discussed here. Um, yeah, he also trusts the collector of Kharaj, Jizya, Ushr, and Zakat must not cause any form of injustice. Yes, he wanted to avoid discrimination. Yes, he elucidated the Bedouin and urban dichotomy. He emphasized the role of the urban people to serve the survival of the state by sharing the administrative responsibility of the Muslims. So this is the reason why he promoted that private zakat and also public zakat. And public zakat he wanted to distribute to the entire province, I mean entire region, rather than taking back to the but maybe few of course there are cost, and there are cost of course, the central government can take, but the most important thing that it should be distributed, most of the money should be distributed to that people. For example, it happens today, if there is a state, yeah, there is a state giving you more revenues, if there is a state paying you more taxes, um, but what happened most of the time, the central government is collecting and not paying back, not doing the right thing. Instead, they spend in some other places. Um, so he wanted to see, I mean, Imam Abu Ubaid wanted to give priority to the people who pay the taxes. Yeah. I think, yeah, the same thing. Due to these responsibilities of the urban people can benefit more from revenues and regular stipends and provisions by state. The Bedouin can only benefit from fake revenues during crises such as invasion of an enemy, severe drought, and civil unrest. So I think these are the reason why he wanted to um, propose that what he was proposing when we were discussing. Um, but if you look into division of labor, production surplus, exchange and trade, I think these are the topics he didn't talk very much. Like Ibn Khaldun is discussing those things. We will inshallah look into it later. Um, so that was not that time. His issue of that, of his time was actually collecting the jizya, collecting the Kharaj, and collecting the Ushr. Yeah. So he wanted to keep balanced civil rights and obligation. He strongly disagrees with the equal distribution of zakat among the eight groups. This is amazing. You have eight asnaf. I know, I agree with you. You have to pay zakat and collect zakat and pay to these eight asnaf. But all these eight asnaf, not necessarily you have to pay them equally. Okay, for example, you have 800,000 collected zakat. You don't have to pay 100,000 each to each asnaf, because you need to look into asnaf and according to their requirement you have to pay. Because some of the asnaf need more money, some of the asnaf they need less money. So this is something amazing from his own ijtihad. He says that he even defined the level of wealth which he considers the minimum amount to be zakatable, and also those he considers are entitled for zakat. Abu Ubaid considers those who have fulfilled the minimum standard of living, 40 dirhams, clothing, shelter, and servant, are not entitled to zakat. You see, he even come up with the number of that time, which means that he know what's going on exactly in the real life. He knows, so he fixed some sort of taxes for that. Therefore, there are three tier socio-economic categories in relation to zakat status: zakatable rich, the middle category, neither entitled nor subject to zakat, and the beneficiaries of zakat. Right? So there are three categories: zakatable rich, middle category, and then beneficiaries of zakat. The principle he adopted is to each according to his or her need, and each according to his due, and the ruler has the discretion to decide the collector's share. The function of money, he talks about most important thing that he prefer gold and silver because standard of exchange, value, and medium of exchange. So this is all he already started long time ago. From there only we are talking about the exchange. To him, gold and silver prefer than other commodities as money because of their general usefulness. He also referred to Caliph Abdul Malik bin Marwan attempt to standardize, because this Abdul Malik bin Marwan, he is actually son of Marwan bin Hakam, who was actually close to, very close to Muawiyah ibn Abu Sufyan, the first Umayyad Khalifa. So Abdul Malik bin Marwan, he is one of the Umayyad Khalifa who started bringing. I think maybe if you know how they start minting dinar, I think you will learn Abdul Malik bin Marwan. Because before that they were using the Byzantine gold, and it was written that Jesus is son of God. So later he wanted to change to La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, so he started having his own dinar. That was Abdul Malik bin Marwan. Yeah, he talks about ownership, he talks about, so this is the conclusion. Since his method is mainly based on Quran and Sunnah, the principle of core is economic areas is distributive justice. Due to the importance of public finance to support the financial requirements of the state, which is at war with the non-Muslims, and peace treaty was at time established, and ownership of land and taxation became issue of the day. Right, that's what I told you. Especially the ownership of the land, the taxation was the main focal point here in his discussion. He focused his efforts to evaluate public finance from the perspective of social and economic justice and to fulfill individual and public needs. So that's why we call this Kitab al-Amwal. It's a public finance. It's not individual personal finance. It's a public finance. Therefore, it is understandable that his magnum opus Kitab al-Amwal contains discussion on land policies and reforms, public revenues and distribution according to the sacred text in order to ensure a stable and harmonious society. I think that's all for today. I think I stop here, and then I will open the floor for questions. And here is the uh, password for attendance.